Dear colleagues, good afternoon, and thanks a lot to have possibility to speak about the regulation background of the crop protection activity, not only impacting your area, but full agriculture. And thanks for the organizer to put this topic onto the agenda. I tried to be in 25 minutes as it was requested, which is very hard for me, I can tell to you, because this area is so deep and complicated and so many aspects affects the result. So it's very difficult, and apologies to me if I will be somehow out of the topic which I showed to you on the slides. Sorry for that in advance. Today, I'm representing Hungarian Crop Protection Association, leading the regulatory working group in this association. That's why first I would like to give a short introduction of HUCPA, Hungarian Crop Protection Association. Then I go into the details of the legislation, including the social and some economical background of this as well. And then I would like to show the registration system in the EU just in bracket in few words, because it's very deep, and I can speak about this during a day even. And then some effect which comes from that to the agriculture. So Hungarian Crop Protection Association works actively in Hungary since 2004, representing 15 crop protection companies, always following all the requirements, being compliant, working closely with the grower associations in Hungary, and I can add that also with the decision makers, the authorities. And the most important, we take high responsibility for sustainable crop protection and the safe use of PPP, plant protection products. And we always be in line, keen on being in line with the legislation and the legislative requirements. Having this on our agenda, that we are really taking the responsibility of the sustainable agriculture, first I'd like to show to you a sentence how we understand the sustainability on this field. Responsible, taking highest priority for environment and human safety. This is very important and base. But in the same time, we know that all the activities using crop protection product must be productive, profitable, and why I put it with red, socially accepted. Without social acceptance, never can be sustainable our activity. This is very important. How can we manage the sustainable crop protection use? It never can be the return to the past, but in the same way, we need to care that's clear on biodiversity, water and soil protection, keeping all the mandatory requirements of the integrated crop protection. This is the only one way for us in Europe. And for that, certainly, we will use more and more all the precision and digital solutions which come and under development. I'm sure several presentations will cover this topic. This is the thematic strategy of the European crop protection legislation. You need to understand that we cannot speak about separated rules, directives, regulations. It is a strong system building very strongly on each other using several legislative elements. It was started in 2006. When the mandatory cooperation for sustainable agriculture was decided in Europe, then put in the same year the mandatory data sharing rule, then the uniforms and mandatory qualification of crop protection machines qualification, very important elements. And then in 2009, we had to be published this 1107 regulation, which is the main rule setting the play in European Union with crop protection products. So this is a thematic strategy. We need to use all these elements together and take all these elements together. To understand the situation, I believe I cannot leave out some words about the social backgrounds. What is the social backgrounds in Europe? The society in Europe is highly committed to protect the environment. This is clear. We all know that. In the same time, we need to see the facts. The population increased dramatically. We all know that. With that, the urbanization increased more than we already have, and this is a real issue. For that, we need increasing food production. You understand this, how contradiction is between this, keeping the biodiversity, which is really in risk. We all know that as well. And this increased fruit production must be done in decreasing cropland. So contradiction on all areas. The main factors that impacted additionally above those facts I showed to you, the economy of the European Union in 2002, we had COVID, raw material shortage coming from that, supply disruptions coming from that, war, extreme drought season, that was something unbelieving, and the energy crisis. What happened all above that in 2023? Inflation came, extreme weather continued. The war unfortunately didn't finish, but we all know what happened. Questioned the energy for the future as well. And we have decreasing commodity prices for Europe growers, which they must face with. And in the same time, we realize that even in Europe, in big European member states, the demand for the high quality food is started to be decreased. So once again, contradiction, which we cannot leave out during our review. What happened after that? We all know that Europe introduced Green Deal Farm to Fork strategy, and what they decided to bring sustainable use directive to regulation level, which could be, if it happens, mandatory for all EU member states without any additional legal action. Okay, what happened? Based on the facts I tried to share with you in my previous slide, all these are questioned. I'm sure you are involved. I don't want to go into this. You know what happened. We all heard from the radio, from the television, read in the internet what happened. So now we don't know what will happen with this decision of European Union. But still there is a risk that we have this 1107, which is very strict. I will show to you immediately, going into some details. But if it will be reopened, it won't be good for the agriculture. We all know that. So it's also a risk, but we will see what will happen. That's why I put the question mark there. I can say that 1107 as a regulation is the most strict registration system around the world. Never see similar, neither in America nor in Japan or other countries. So Europe has the most strict system to regulate crop protection registration, covering all the countries. Certainly UK is out. And why I mentioned that? Because it is a very important element to understand the situation. UK was a very pragmatic member state from this point of view. And since UK moved out, we lost its big country's pragmatism in Europe. I just like to show it to you. Okay, we don't use paper anymore. We use electronic version of data, but I can demonstrate to you how big the data requirements. So I put this slide only because of that. How the system looks like. The first, which is very important to understand, that this is a two-line system. First, the active substance must be registered on European level, participating with several players. Then, if we pass this, it's not end of the story. We need to go to the second level, where the product must be registered. We can say national level, but I will show to you that it's not a real national, it's a zonal procedure. I've just go through very quickly how it looks like. The applicant submit the active ingredient dossier, then one member state has been chosen to analyze all this huge data package. In the same time, almost parallelly, EFSA, the scientific body of European Union, does their own evaluation. So we have two evaluations, one from the member state, one from EFSA, which is the scientific body. Then they put their results to the Commission. Commission presents a proposal to the EU member states representative in so-called SCOPAF meeting, and the countries vote for the active ingredient or against the active ingredient. If the majority vote against, no registration, that's clear. But if the majority is vote for inclusion the active ingredient on Annex 1, it doesn't mean that all EU member states must follow that. How it looks like? The member states make their own decision whether accept the voted inclusion on Annex 1. Okay, they accept, but they doesn't let the product go into their market. So it's again another gate which needs to be passed. Okay, how it looks like now, 1107, how it was before the introduction of 1107. Need to understand that before this in Europe, we had a risk-based assessment. I'm sure the picture gives the clear background of it. And what is the situation now? We think from now, when 1107 was introduced, that the lion is here and real danger is in place. Even if we all know who works in crop protection, we all know that the real situation like that, there are dangers somehow, but if we use the risk reduction elements, I will speak about later on, we have safe use. But this is the interpretation now in Europe. Okay, once we have Annex 1 listing of an active ingredient in the European Union, it's because we passed the hazard cutoff criteria, then we passed the risk assessment, which is also very deep. Remember, on so many data, so many studies behind, which were preferred to find that the real safe use is in place, passing the risk assessment. But it's not end of the story again. There are a third level again, which is so-called comparative assessment. Even if the active ingredient is included on the Annex 1 list, it could happen that that active ingredient is included into another group which called active ingredient to be substituted. And in this case, the product needs to be passed this third level called comparative assessment. So you see that we can say the story is never ending. How the product authorization looks like in the case if the active ingredient is included on Annex 1 and our country decided to accept it. This is, as I told to you, a zonal system. In Europe, we have 3 zones. I believe this slide shows it to you. North, Central, and South zone. Hungary is in the Central zone. You see together which countries. UK is out. But you see that very strong countries are in the same zone. This is the situation. And the decision on product registration, perhaps for Hungary, depends on these countries' decision. Just summarizing what I tried to show to you very briefly. This is an extremely complex system with extreme complex evaluation and decision-making process. And using this funny picture, but somehow it looks like that. Too many cooks spoiled the broth. So this is how we face with during the evaluation. Complex process, legal timelines, many cases on delay, or the requirements are increasing even during the procedure. We face with new and new requirements, which we couldn't know at the time when we submitted the dossier by the deadline. That's clear. Cannot follow. Cut-off criteria exclude risk assessment, very important. And additionally, another European body, ECHA, which is the chemicals authority, because 1107 regulates the crop protection products only, which are part of the chemicals, you know. But the chemicals itself are evaluated by ECHA as well. And ECHA gives the classification of the active ingredients. And it brings the classification of the formulations. So you remember we pass all those elements, all those steps that I showed to you. And finally, we could face that ECHA gives another result overwriting everything what we did before. Okay, it looks that in this system, we face that precautionary principles are very strong. Many cases more strong and heavy than the science and risk assessment-based elements. And it brings, I'm sorry, but I can't to say, unfavorable environment for the authorization of active substance in Europe. Okay, the consequences, significant loss of active ingredient is visible. We all know that and face it. I don't want to repeat, not risk-based, and that brings the situation. What I'd like to show to you on this slide, we lose the active ingredients like this. Significant loss of active ingredients is visible, which brings less and less type of mode of action in the practice, which consequences the increasing resistance risk, clear. And because of this, the growers, the users, increasing demand is in place for emergency registrations. We know that possibility. Each country can make the decision if a real crop protection emergency situation occurred to grant emergency registration. 1107 gives the right, but in the same time, the Commission pushed the countries to decrease year by year, push hardly the countries to decrease the number of emergency authorization, which also gives more narrow possibilities for the users of crop protection products. So contradictions again. If we see the number of renewed and non-renewed active ingredients from the total number which is known in Europe momently, we clearly see that double number of the non-renewed than the renewed. And what we can see, no forbidden active ingredient. No any active ingredient was forbidden in Europe. What does it mean? No real danger is there, as I showed to you with the picture of lion. Just to demonstrate that since 2019-20, if we see the new active ingredients approved in European Union, we don't have any conventional crop protection active ingredient to be included on Annex 1. We have only biopesticides. Okay, I say only, I don't say that as a negative point. It is the future, the biopesticides. We would like to push, we would like to reach the legislative bodies. Let us go more quickly with these type of products registration, because these are safe, low risk products. I'd like to show this in the other slide, that since 2020, you see that less and less new active ingredients are in blue, you see, and how increased the low-risk product registered in Europe, and here appeared the so-called basic substance elements in the system and in the registered active ingredients. In this slide, I would like to call on your attention on this line, which shows how dramatically increased the non-approved active ingredient numbers since 2018. And this trend is go up further. The Hungarian registrations gives a good mirror of the European registration, as all countries, certainly. I took the number which was granted as a new registration permit in Hungary in 2022. It's almost 300. But if we go into the details, less than 20% of this big number which is a new formulation. And where we speak about new formulation, we need to know that these are not new active ingredient-based formulations. These are new formulations from R&D companies, developed better formulation, and using the generic registrations on the same active ingredient product. It is also very important to see that in Hungary, in 2022, 400 emergency registration permit was granted, huge number. We know that the Commission pushed Hungary as well to decrease this number, and Hungarian authority is really keen on decreasing this. But on the other hand, the users requires, because they see that if no possibility to use effective active ingredient, effective product in case of real crop protection emergency situation, this is the only way. But less and less possibility is kept in Europe for this solution as well. The consequences: more actives are lost, approved active ingredients are circulated back into the system. So once we reach the Annex 1 listing, it doesn't mean that this is the end of the story. Few years later, we need to be ready to submit the new dossier to renew the active ingredient again, based on more difficult environmental legislation. The sustainable agriculture is the big question, how it looks like. It cannot be without crop protection, that's clear. New way of thinking is the only one way. And how it can be managed using the integrated crop management, which is a 3-pillar-based, very stable system, and this is the only one way. Responsibility for the environment, using risk reduction measures, follow the label instructions, use PPPs only if it's real needs. We all know that. These are the priorities. I won't go into the details because I believe I passed my possibilities. And I'd like to write to you that please bring with you this message. Safe use of PPPs is obligation of the users. And I would like to ask you to bring this message with you. Without this responsibility taken, we cannot manage the issues. Thanks a lot for your attention. Many thanks for having possibility to share this thing. And any question you have, you can bring with you my phone number. I'm ready to answer. Thank you so much.